Manhood, brought to you in part by Solomon's Bespoke. Manhood, brought to you in part by Reboot Sports Drink.
Welcome to another conversation here on Manhood. The topic today is a really big one, a very interesting one. And I know I say that quite a lot, but this one, I'm really curious to see how we dissect this particular topic and go granular. It's simply responsibility does not define manhood. Let me say that again. Responsibility does not define manhood. So to have that discussion, to really go deep into that understanding and to give a better understanding for myself as well, Johanse Ayodike, Behavior Change Consultant, Lou Lyons, Mohammed Muakil.
Not bad.
Not bad there. Also known the duo as Freetown Collective, certainly needs no introduction, and really, really happy to have you guys here for what could be ostensibly called our season finale for season 3. Even though the aim is to continue having these conversations because it's much, much needed. So Lou, I'm gonna go straight in to you, with regards to that topic. Responsibility doesn't define manhood, brother.
Yeah, and more specifically, I would just pluralize it, responsibilities, because I want to couch it in what society would view as the utility of masculinity, of manhood, what men's supposed to do. And if they don't do that, then they're not deserving of being called men. So I don't think that that's helpful. I don't think that that's productive. I don't think it's humane. My brother here, Johanse, would know that in psychology there's a group of thought called the Gestalts. And they believe that the whole is more than just the sum of its moving parts. And if what we really want from men is for men to see themselves as whole human beings, having a whole human experience, you can't reduce men to responsibilities. We wouldn't get behavior change like that.
That's interesting because I just started reading and doing research on our book, and the author slipping me. The name of the book is The Manipulated Man. Right? The premise behind the book is that, and it's a woman writer, is that men were never in control of society.
Facts.
That women were always pulling the strings to get men to do all the utilities that they either didn't want to do or wasn't physically strong enough to do. So you bring in this topic that men are not defined by their responsibilities is quite interesting because that's what I grew up learning. That to be a man, I have to do X, Y, Z, and may not be one standard because in one family it may have these certain responsibilities. In Trinidad it may have Grenada may be different, the US, etc., etc. And because in different places it have different responsibilities, and then every woman you meet, they also come from a different background of expecting what a man should do, is like a moving goalpost. So you can never score the goal, and then eventually it will take a toll on you.
So I just need gents to really understand, because as we use the first segment for the opening part of the opening salvo is, of course, the topic, but then to have a real understanding of how we're going to shape the conversation going towards, to closure of this particular, show episode. So when we say responsibilities doesn't define manhood, are we still saying that as a man, you have responsibilities?
Of course.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's why he defined it, and he didn't say responsibility. So responsibilities. It's a very big difference, right? Between saying responsibility doesn't define how you take on responsibility will define you as a human being. But let me give you an example of something, right? I come from a long line of men who, for them, their days were spent working hard. Hard work is how you get paid. How you get paid is how you handle your family, and that will define, right? So growing up, my father would have taken me on real job sites. I mixed real cement and thing whatever. And at a very early age, I decided for me, that wasn't what I wanted to do with my life. I was not trying to be a hustler or a laborer. That was not what I wanted to do. And I felt as though I was better at other things, right? And I remember once I hit mid-teens into my 20s, being around my father and his friends and a lot of the men of that era, when they shake your hand and your hand's soft, that was a big thing. Like, it
Yeah.
was a big
Yeah.
thing. To the point where I was a man used to go in my room sometime and just be slapping the wall and thing and doing anything I could do to get my hand hard and a boy. And then after a while, I had to kind of admit to myself this was some ridiculous behavior I was
Yeah.
getting on with, because what I just do wholly, I was writing at the point in time. I was a student. I was not doing what my father and them was doing. Every now and then, yeah, I'll go on land and cut some bush. And know I have these skills, but it's not how I earn my living.
But people still do that.
It's still-
The other day I
yeah.
shook someone's hand, and I mean, my hand isn't totally soft, but it's not hard like banga seed, you know. So therefore, you know, they shook it, and you could see there was almost like a
But there's a lot of things that's tied into it, you know. A lot of things that's tied into that. And for a long time, I used to really feel that type of way. It has certain men I just don't want to shake their hand because I know what you are going to say now, boy.
Before you go on, Mohammed, I'm real glad you shared that. And the previous episode, we discussed vulnerability
Yeah.
and being able to, you see, the thing sometimes we men just do to be considered men behind the scenes, because in different places, in different scenarios, if you don't have these certain criteria or you're not fulfilling certain responsibilities, then you really is less of a man. And just thinking about that, I understand why we have so much bars in Trinidad. I understand why the casino will always make money, because even once I remember I was doing golf, and the golf club I was in, they have residences where you could spend the night, and many men say they come here to get away from responsibilities, because even though they're responsible, and these men were, I told them, these are upper class men, they're fulfilling, but they were just tired of one day and good enough, one day and not good enough. So I'm real glad you share that, because there's so many things.
But I think there's this extreme fear, right? Especially again from the generations before ours, that I think that we working it out. I think we working it out, but only in certain parts of the society. I don't think as a general rule we working it out. Because as somebody who exists in different spaces, there are things that I feel very comfortable to do if I'm in London. There are things that I feel very comfortable to do if I lime in somewhere else. And then there are things I know if I'm not careful where I live in and where I'm from, if I, for instance, my grandmother, when I was younger, she'd be like, paint my nails and about things. So she loved the red thing. And I started painting my thumb, just my thumb. And I paint the other thumb, right? Cool. So I'm a 2 thumbs red. And I used to observe how uncomfortable this would make certain men in certain spaces, right? I went to buy some socks before I was leaving to go to London this last time here, right? I just see a thing of socks in a store in Westmore, pick it up and carry it. And man was like, that's women's socks, So I watching the socks. I know my size on my foot. This could fit me. I don't understand what's the thing. And he was making this big point of, are you're aware that this female socks? And I say, well, it could fit me. He's like, yeah, but it's women's socks. I say, well, me and him had like a whole 2 minutes discussion about women's socks.
Yeah.
You understand? So I feel like there's this line, There's this line, and it doesn't allow us many times to achieve our full capacity. What it also does is, when men have children, they also want to prepare them for those responsibilities, because a father doesn't want his son to not become a man. And my father was a real loving man, right? And growing up, my father used to kiss me all the time, always like treated me, But when I got to about 9, 10 years old, he used to tell me, when we're in public, like, ease up on it.
The irony is sometimes the child themselves, my 7-year-old, for example, I have no issues with affection with my son in terms of I hugging, there's a lot of science behind it, the importance of hugging a human. So we're not talking about male, female here, we're talking about the importance of hugging a human, to have that connectivity, whether it be a partner, whether it be a child, whether it be a friend. There's a lot in there with regards to hugging. And I kissed my son, but my father was a Royal Air Force man, so there was a lot of it was shake hand, that type of thing. So I mean, I grew up. That's his. Those were our shows of affection, and it was okay. But I don't mind kissing up my son and saying I love you, but I realized when I drop him to swimming or to tennis or karate or I realized that he wanted to put on his book bag and so on from the car, and then we're walking out and he's walking ahead of me, and I'm like, son, what's going on here? And he's 7. So the roles are reversed. But I just wanted to ask you, Lou, Mohammed, say, you brought up that people, the bars, casinos, etc. But we see a lot of memes, and they say not everything is a joke yet, so we make things into a joke. And you see all of these memes where a man sits down. You come home after your responsibility or your responsibilities. You're going out, whether it be the breadwinner, you've had a hard day. And as you reach home, you decide to sit down and, God forbid, you flick on that TV, and the woman might be there. Nobody's saying she hasn't had a hard day herself, but she's looking at you now and sometimes almost disgust, like, hey, they are rubbish to take out. They have the boy to put to bed or the children to put to bed. Or they want to see you doing something. They're uncomfortable almost with seeing you relaxed. And I see everybody smiling because
we've contributed to that, and it's a cyclic thing. And I often have this conversation with Muhammad. It takes a lot of courage from men to display to their people, our parents, our brethren, but also our platonic woman friend. And I think a lot needs to happen in our platonic intergender relationships, apart from our romantic relationships.
So let me ask you to pause there just a minute. So you believe that men can have female friends?
It's actually a
and
sign.
Be platonic or without wanting.
I actually think it's a sign of emotional health to be able to have platonic friendships. Yeah. I think that the ability to do that indicates how emotionally healthy you are. And I'm not trying to negotiate anybody's boundaries because you're at where you're at that point in life. But I do believe having relationships just as a human experience, and it doesn't have to be sexual, it could be platonic, Socratic. I think those kinds of relationships are important. But we men skimp on how much of ourselves we display to people. So when women have expectations from us, they're only going based on the data they've received. So they think that a productive man is a good man, a man who always finds something to do. And what modern women are finding out is that men are becoming more and more emotionally bereft. Okay, you have a job, I have a job. I could pay rent, you could pay the rent. The child going to school, I could buy books, you could pay the tuition. There's no need now for a single breadwinner anymore. So now we have more, or we should have more resources, not just financially, but emotionally and spiritually and with time to be able to forge something. And with that expectation for, well, what more can we do? Women are saying that they realize that there's a deficit in how deep men can go with them in intimacy and in partnership. And that's because on a real fundamental level, I mean, you can't plug something into a wall if you don't have a socket there. And if men are feeling like relationships don't have space for the rest of them, only my utility is the currency here, then you asking more of me. I don't know what you're asking of me. Are you asking of me to tell you my most crazy aspirations that I fear to give voice to because it could sound real unbelievable? Are you asking me to tell you I actually scared of going bald, And you say, that's what you studying about?
Vulnerability.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean. Women now are saying men are emotionally bereft.
He wasn't here before, but you see how thematic it is, right?
Yeah.
And I was telling Robert recently that maybe since January, February, I've had an influx of male clientele. Right now, I think even the statistics, I think I have more male clients actually than female clients currently. And all the men saying the same thing. From the 16-year-old boy to the 2 weeks ago, I had a 73-year-old man. And it's the same thing. What more you want from me? right? Talking about male-female dynamic relationship.
I think a lot of us, again, because we're not coming in at the beginning of the cycle, but we at whatever point in several cycles, I think a lot of us set ourselves up for it as well. Because we enter into the relationship showing this woman, I can handle you. Nah. You understand? And I have thankfully had women in my life at different points check me and just go, no, but I could do that, you know. No, let me do that. And me having now to pay her back a little bit and go, I'm running on a quiz code in here. Why I feeling that type of way if she opened the door for me, why? I recently went out, and when I went to the bathroom, the person paid the bill, and it was a somewhat sizable bill because I had asked them to go to this place, and they paid the bill, and they're not gonna disrupt me, like it's not gonna short circuit me, but at the same time,
You feel something.
it's exactly what Lou's saying. There's a parity now in terms of resources, right? So I don't have to go out there and look for it. And many times I meet women and they making way more money than me. So what we bring in, so is that very tenuous question that we do like to ask that I find is so misunderstood of what you're bringing to the table now, boy. Because if it is that we're not actually talking about resources, right? So we're not talking about chicken and grapes and rice and whatever it is, right? It's not that. We could both bring them things to the table. So it's no longer about resources bringing to the table.
Yeah.
It is who is now seated at the table and what are we talking about? What we dealing with? Who are you and what have you brought to the table? And if the discussion, because the man set himself up from the very beginning, well, I laid the table. Well, I could have laid the table.
But also life has conditioned him from boyhood
Yeah.
to only view himself as being useful to the tribe as his strength would allow him to.
Right.
So by the time he get to some place of self-awareness, unless he have other men who thinking like that,
Correct.
and a mother who can see him more than being the strong help substitute to the father,
Yeah.
he don't have much references for who his emotional self is.
And then the emotional type that we see growing up so much is you have the mother who does overtalk and nag everybody. These are the stereotypes. And then you have the father who is just, this very stoic figure. He don't say very much. But when he talk, everybody thing. But this man is probably sitting there, these men and them, our grandfathers and their fathers, are sitting down there with a lot to say. A lot to, and for the most part, they might channel what they had to say through the wife, and then she will submit it to the family 20 times or whatever, and the wife will look like the bad one or whatever. It's the same stories our grandmothers give us all the time.
Well, talk to your son.
Well, yeah.
Correct. God, so we need to take a break, but when we come back, I want to bring up a conversation that was had in a boys chat that I had of people who are family men, some are single, but people who are generally very open-minded about a lot of things. And one question came up about do you expect your wife to bring you a plate of food? And it sparked a whole conversation around certain things. And you as well, Lou, had mentioned to me about in the analogy of responsibilities doesn't define manhood. We brought up there's peanuts and there's peanut butter. There's, what's the other one?
There's cheese and there's cheese paste.
There's cheese and there's cheese paste. So we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we speak more about responsibilities does not define manhood. Whether you agree or disagree.
Welcome back to Manhood, and we are discussing responsibilities does not make manhood, or manhood is not made up of responsibilities alone. And Muhammad, you is coming in hot on that plate of food topic there, boy.
A hot plate of food will. Anyhow. Yeah, boy. I don't understand when I hear these things oftentimes why there are debates. Because I
Right.
believe in love. And I have nobody that don't like a plate of food brought to them. Now, if you are a man and you're in a relationship and you are not willing to reciprocate that behavior, you don't think that that's your responsibility to do that. And you define your manhood or your position in the relationship by the fact that when you reach home and you sit down, your woman is bringing you a plate of food. And that makes you feel a type of way. One of the things I have had to learn over and over the years is that the way that I feel about something, a woman will have the same experience and feel the same thing and will want the same things. And a lot of times we've been grown and raised to look at women almost as alien species. Like, if this is done to me, I will feel this way. But if this is done to her, I don't expect her to feel the same way, good and bad.
Do so, don't like so.
And and all the different parts of that. I love to be in a position where somebody invites you over and they cook and they bring you a plate of food, or you come from somewhere and you're tired and somebody that you love bring a plate of food for you. I think a lot of men, when they get into the argument, just don't realize that you can provide that, or you are supposed to provide that as well for your partner in whatever way. It mightn't be the same thing, but find out what makes that person feel that way. If you are doing that, you will not have to have a conversation with that person about bringing a plate of food for you. Because how I feel is, you should never even have to have that as a conversation. It should never be a situation where you like, girl, I'll tell you something, No, it should be that you're receiving that out of a deep sense of love, and because that person knows they are safe and that things are reciprocated in this relationship. You know what I mean?
So, in other words, in your love language, it's
Why you watching me
so? So when I brought up the plate of food, right? This, they say the way to a man's heart is through his belly, right? I disagree, because it's whoever the they is. I know you're wrong with the
It's
they,
about a lot of white
right?
opinions that's being floating
So
around. But I mean,
I don't, like if somebody could cook or don't cook, I don't really have an issue with that. It's nice to get a plate of food regardless from who it is, whether it's your brethren, whether you buy it, whether they bought. So,
I don't have an issue, but if we could cook is a plus for sure.
Agreed, right? So
because I can real cook now. So.
When I say a plate of food, what was we talk about responsibilities and the expectation, but what was ironic to me and eye-opening is that when a brother asked the question, if a woman should bring a plate of food, or if your wife or partner brings a plate of food for you, it was the conversation that was sparked, and it was almost like this deep cathartic experience that was happening about people saying what they had to say, but the irony is you got both sides.
Right.
So for those who got the food, right, we're now, based on what other persons were saying, we're now almost feeling bad, like, wait, now, is it that I have this expectation? Should I be like some of the other brothers in this group, really go in and get my own food or preparing the food, etc., etc.? And to those who didn't get it are now asking themselves, well, what is it? Are you trying to tell me my wife or my partner don't love me? And it was this whole back and forth debate. And to me, as I explained this, I think we had this conversation once on our manhood. It's simple. I don't expect you to cook. I certainly don't expect you to bring the food for me. Now, if I'm incapacitated and you bring it, and as your show of love, then I appreciate that as a show of love, not as an expectation or your responsibility. By no means. Like, who the hell am I? I am king. I am king. No. Hold on. But I am no king. But I could get up. My feet working. I could get up. If she is prepared that food, the least I could do is go and get it and wash the wares afterwards.
I disagree with you a little bit because I am a king and you're a queen.
Right.
Now we get to define. I know. No, that's not you, but But we get to define what that means, because I want you to feel like a queen. What you need to feel that way, and I'm willing to give you what you need to feel that way within reason, right?
If she does feel that way, that's part of her love language to do so, then yes. But it mustn't be an expectation, like you are supposed to do this. If that's her way of showing love, and you're open to that, that's one thing. But what I'm saying to you is, as men, it was the full-on debate of people now feeling a particular way. Some of, am I not expecting enough? And to those who expected it are now feeling like...
I want to hear you answer.
What you're saying here is really what I think men in general in society experiencing, where you don't know what your identity is. Because the men who getting it was wondering if they should feel bad for getting it. And the men who not getting it wondering, well, maybe I should be asking for it. So they don't even know how to define themselves as a man or what a man should get. And then Muhammad, you're saying that you shouldn't demand it. Tell me if I hear it right. You shouldn't demand the plate of food. You should have the space comfortable enough that if that expression of love, to give it the plate of food, right?
Absolutely.
I understand what you're saying. I don't know if I disagree, but I would add a different element to it, because I'll give a premise and come back. I believe common sense does not exist inherently.
Right.
Right? Even though we think we do. We have your sense, my sense, etc., based on how we grow up. But when two people come together, and let's use it as a romantic relationship, we come with two different senses.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk, this sense becomes common.
Right.
So if I say, I want you to bring me food, that's what I want from you. I'm telling you.
Right.
You could also say the same thing. You say, well, if I bring in your food, then you have to rub my feet. I just give
Right.
you an example. So I think in the plate of food, it's not that, well, it's just by osmosis, you're supposed to know that
No.
to bring more food. You should say, you could be able to ask for the food, but the person it has to be like a agreement between the people. So it's not what a man supposed to do or a woman supposed to do versus what you and I decide we want to do.
So in the room, because help me out, because my perspective is slightly skewed by the fact that I grew up seeing my father, God rest his soul, sit down and my mother would bring food to him. And as a son, watching your mom and thinking to yourself that behind the scenes that he may not have seen, because he's now coming home from work, but I would be interacting with my mother a lot more, would have seen and say, well, you know what, this woman's tired. And seeing her come home after that, and especially now as a father myself, I'm thinking, wow, my mom raised 4. You know, and at that point had no car, had to travel, even pregnant, etc., you know, holding me from school and things like that. To now come home and have to make food and then put it out for you. So now that I'm in a position, of course, seeing that, I vow to myself, I would never expect those things from...
I want to add something there, right? And I want to set up a preface and come back to my answer
Right.
too. I think when we talk about satisfaction and the ability to have a desire met, there's a loud silence. There's something that we're not saying, but we're saying. And we should say it so that we don't leave it to be assumed. There's always the assumption in the room that we don't want our comfort to come at the expense of oppression to somebody else. I think that's important. I don't want any partner of mine to be oppressed in order for my comforts to be met.
Agreed.
But that gets lost in translation in the way we express our desires. Because we live in a very exploitative world. And the premise is, I don't understand how the term human resources still exists. That is the most politically incorrect statement that is allowed to still flourish in corporate environments. Either somebody is a human or something is a resource. You are not a resource. You are not a resource. I am not a resource. I am not here to be exploited, extracted, and depleted to be produced into something else. But that's what.
Maybe in a corporate environment.
That is what capitalism does. So when we go to the world of work and we experience these frameworks and we come back to our relationships, right? And we don't do half as much work in our relationships to define terms, the way we get handed a contract with scope of works and job descriptions where we are familiar with a certain vocabulary of being in the world that is highly exploitative by design.
Wife and husband.
These are your rules. Do this, do that, do that.
Even from school.
So what we all saying is, this thing is negotiated. I'm not saying you are doing it. I want the plate of food because you are the woman and I am the man. I would like my desires to be met if it doesn't oppress you. And if it does, can I incentivize you enough from on my side that it don't feel like oppression?
Perfect. You see what I'm saying there? Perfect. There's something I use in couples counseling called solution-focused couples counseling, right? Where something similar. Couple comes in, they have conflict, etc. And I say, husband, you list everything you want, no matter what, right? This is everything. Wife, you list every single thing. And then let me start to negotiate. Let's hear what it is. So I want 10 hugs a day. Nah, I could only give you 5 and I could give you a certain time. Okay, are you good with this? I want X, Y, Z. And after those kind of conversations, the relationship is changed. Even, I remember there were some revelations. The wife would say, why didn't say that all the time? Husband said, I didn't think. And a lot of things came out of that just by having that conversation of not It's not what a man does do or a woman does do versus I telling you what I want, you tell me what you want, and then we find out.
But,
And-
but let me ask you all something, just for clarity. Sorry, Mohammed. Just to ask, just for clarity in that circumstance. So if and I'm not in any way being facetious. I'm really asking, just in a circumstance that might be a little bit exaggerated. That if you in your way of communicating with your woman is to cuss and speak to her in a particular way, but she understands it as you and is okay with that. She doesn't take offense to that because she focuses on something else. So she doesn't in any way see that as a form of disrespect. It might be upbringing, it might be just generally, she just knows who you are. Does that make it right? Does that make it right because the person receiving it is okay with it, that the behavior is right?
The question I would ask is there hurt being suffered?
Yeah, what to say, context and
Is there
boundaries.
damage being done?
Yeah.
And if to some extent she's unaware that she's actually going through some emotional mutilation to make sure that that's all okay, then that's wrong. But if, and as unlikely as it is, they have a common sense where he say, I mean, we obviously can't cuss on the phone, but on the show, but I have.
You could
We could cuss on the show?
cuss on the
Come
show.
on, man. You should have said that. Yeah. So if he's saying, well, I had to be the jack in here, but it is understood that, okay, this is his comedic release with me, and he's safe enough to do that, or vice versa. And that does be my test. Can this thing work vice versa? If not, then it have the potential to be oppressive.
So Mohammed, I'd cut you off there. And
Yeah, no, I was just saying too that this is why vulnerability is important, and being able to feel safe to feel vulnerable, because there are things that you need that you wouldn't even know how to begin to express until you start having certain conversations. But I could tell you as a man and as a human being on this planet, there are times you sit down and you have a thought, right? And there's somebody that might be very close to you. It could be a father, could be a mother, and you want to say something to them. But that part of you is weighing that thing in your head. And you're sitting down there. The longer you think about it, the more difficult it is to say it. And then you put it aside and you wait for another time. But if you're in a space where you feel that you're comfortable now, you can actually let that person know who you are. But also, in having those conversations, you can also realize that the things you've been holding on to and defining yourself by, actually that's not really who you are. You think you want that, right? Because you see your father get, or because you see your mother did it for somebody, whatever. But then as you and this person begin to have these discussions, you realize, oh, no, you don't really want that. You was this. Or you don't really like that. This happened to you and that happened to you, and that's why you are accustomed being treated that way. So you associate this behavior with safety. Oh, okay. Well, that's not safe behavior, But what if this happened? Oh, wait, I actually like that. Nobody never did that for me before. Because how do you know if you like or dislike something if somebody never did it for you, But
So there's a book called The Algebra of Wealth and The Algebra of Happiness. And in the context of those books, just to touch on what you're saying there, it speaks about that during some of these emotional swings or these moments that we go through as humans, right, the best decisions aren't made during that period, because at that point you're making a decision out of survivability. You're trying to survive the moment. You're trying to survive the situation.
yeah, don't go to the grocery hungry.
So correct. So
Right,
like
right.
you're saying, it's at that point that it's almost like revisiting. When you send a letter, like you pen a letter and you're really angry on email, to wait 24 hours or 48 hours, come back and read it, and then really decide when you're a lot calmer, do I now want to send this out? And a lot of times you'd find you either change your wording or you no longer want to say it. They say, if it's not going to matter in 5 years, don't give it 5 minutes. That I don't know if it was along those lines that you were.
Yeah, just being able to, because a lot of times we want this space to express ourselves and to tell people who we are, and we have all this fervor and this verve, this is who I am, and I want to tell you, and I want to whatever. And that's been one big thing with our relationship. I am that person. I have something to say and I want to say it and whatever. I mightn't be mad or vexed, but I will say it with a certain level of passion. And that passion could be misconstrued. And many times, things have happened and I want to put out a statement. I want to say something. I send it to him first. And he go make me wait like a good half an hour to an hour, in which time I am done kind of. And then he go say, right, so I know you're right, and this, that, whatever, adjust this, think about it in this way, whatever. I ain't telling you to change it, but if you said it this way, it might have a wider reach, it might have but that's a very vulnerable position. I'm angry, I'm in a certain state, I want to be able to say. But we discover, in the same way that the sense becomes common, the self becomes not common, but it's a discovery of self through the other person as well, because we really do come in with all of these things that have been protecting us all this time. And then you walk in with a big spear and a staff and a lion and 40 dogs and whatever, and you walk into this space and you're like, this is who I am. And all the lion and everything sit down there and you there, And the person say, well, you sure that's who you are? That's who you are on the battlefield. Because there's not a battlefield, You could send them out. And you start to take off all your armor now. And you realize, I don't weigh 600 pounds. I'm not actually a lion. All right, I do. I need a staff. And you take off all that now. Do you want a plate of food?
But there's something I wanted to add that I believe is the greatest danger in men defining themselves through responsibilities. We achieve exactly the opposite of what we actually want in the relationship, which is to have a very transactional relationship. And we don't always realize that that's what we do until we get older and we become really resentful with ourselves. When age starts stepping in and you can't do what you used to do. When you have empty nest syndrome, when the kids are now grown. And you can't hide behind, well, I had to do this to send the children to school. All of those responsibilities have now matured. And who are you now? Who are you to this person now?
I agree with you, but we have a responsibility to go
to the break. But just before that, because I really want you.
I'm not defined by this break.
I'm not defined by this break. And the
Robert,
pause.
You on with me?
I do, but this is an important one.
Yeah.
It's an important one because I want to go with the momentum, and you mentioned something about that, and it's something that a lot of brothers that I know suffer with and are concerned about.
Yeah.
Because when you have children, and say for example, your partner is one thing, but specifically with children, you are saying to yourself that you're working, you're giving everything to give them a better life, right? Now, when they're older, you've lost that moment, and you see these memes all the time about the different ages, and you're on your phone, you're on your laptop, you're working. Now, what happens in a situation where you mightn't have the luxury? It might be like, you're a footballer or an artist or something, you're making money and you actually have the time to spend and you choose not to spend. But what about the person who has to work 2-3 jobs? And what about the person who has no choice but to work that time just to be able to put food on the table? And you've lost, as a result, you simply don't have that connection. You think that men don't fight with that on a regular basis?
I think we actually do. I think we actually do.
I think a lot of times we are the architects of our own demise. And it could be because of the programming, Because it's what you're saying, have to. I remember doing a stress management workshop and people saying all the things they have to do. And I was asking, but nobody tell you buy a house this size. Nobody tell you make this amount of children. Nobody tell you take out cable with Flo or whoever it is. Nobody tell you do all these things.
So don't hang your hat higher than you could reach. But
have to do.
So
To me, it's even deeper than don't hang your hat higher than you can reach. But it's difficult because we are talking about is deprogramming yourself, right? Like the more that we earn, the more that we move, the more that is the more you realize your hands could reach further. So you're pulling in more things.
I think he onto something there.
Yeah.
Those are actually emotional decisions that need to be made. And if as men we convince ourselves that we are not emotional beings, we are going to tell ourselves that we're making pragmatic decisions and actually dig ourselves into holes where we had to be slaves.
Yeah.
Correct. And before we go to the break,
now we could go to a break.
No, we could go to a break.
After we could go to the break. You have a responsibility.
Money lenders in Trinidad. In other countries too, but money lenders, not the organizations. Men who is they say that men are the easiest victims, especially married men.
Of course.
Because married men always want to do more than they really could, and they always get catch. And I remember when he told me, I was like, wow, I never really thought about it like that. But is it truth? Because we always trying to hang our hat higher, because we always think that we are these robots and we have to fulfill these things no matter what. Because, and you said it, men just give everything, which I disagree with. You shouldn't give all of yourself to nothing, right? That's my opinion. But we're going to have a break now.
Welcome back to Manhood. And today we are discussing whether or not responsibilities define manhood. Interesting discussion so far.
So I want to jump in, fellas, just to say, what do you determine makes a man?
I want to answer that by picking up where he left off. Johan said something really important about the money lenders. That's actually true. And I ended by saying I believe that these are emotional decisions that men tend to turn into logical decisions, and we end up calculating things that we really shouldn't be calculating. And I think it is very important for us to find the emotional tools and wherewithal to really have human moments with our partners. And say, okay, babe, what really is the desire behind a bigger house? I mean, I could get it, It means I'll have to work longer hours.
How much more life we have left?
What would benefit you more? A bigger house or 10 family vacations in the next 6 years? If I make myself more available for that, make memories.
Someone so foreign. I don't know if I have even heard somebody even say something, what you just said, that consideration, that thought of it. So it's new territory here.
That actually saved my relationship. Being able to come to my wife openly and say, based on the standards I think I set in for myself, I'm failing. And I'm not feeling good about myself. And if I'm not feeling good about myself in this relationship, then I'm not feeling good about us. And that was a real moment of freedom for her to say, well, I ain't asking them things from you. Where you get that from?
And that is the thief, Lou, what you're saying there, it reminded me of the mistakes I've made in my relationships. Because you see how you're saying, I didn't even ask you those things, because we had the programming, right? Becoming hot and sweaty, thinking, I do this. But she didn't even ask that. And then we do it, of course, then we train her in that way. So then when you can't make it because you set your heart higher than where it's supposed to be, now you get angry or resentful. And then it's, well, I do all this for you. But I
don't need that.
Yeah, but you know, one of the most apparent places with it is sexually. We do it all the time as men. And you will hear it from women all the time. You go in there with your skill set now, boy, because you're skillful and you have a set of skills. And you go in there, whatever. But you never once ask a question or observe a body or anything. You just go in and you figure everybody's body's supposed to react the same. You know what I mean? And any man could relate to that. You know what I mean? And we do it in every single relationship. Every single relationship we go in. Unless you have more sense as you get older to sit down and just be like, you know? But yeah, you go in, you peacock in the scene.
So to answer your question, for me, outside of all them responsibilities, or in addition to, what defines manhood for me is the ability to desire to have a holistic human experience.
That is the thing, man.
A desire to have that. Because listen, I'm emotional about this. I am a damn good looking 40-year-old. When I was a boy, I used to look at my uncles who was 40 and them men mash up. They mash up. The toenails not good. The mouth missing teeth. And this is because they've worked themselves into being tools.
Yeah.
That are not good for themselves. But the wives loved it.
So Lou, you mentioned something just now on your handset, and I want to come back to two things. One, you have that conversation, which is a real manly and not even a human existence, human experience to have. And that's really living your truth and really bonding and respecting one yourself and respecting that person to say, I see you and I want you to see me. But what happens in the case where she goes, in one case you could say, I didn't ask you for that. But what happens in the instance where she says, okay, I'm open to you working harder for me to go and get that house. And then you now resented.
No, don't go straight to resentment. Don't go straight to resentment because we're having a discussion. So this is a very open moment. You say what you have to say. She say what she have to say. If you go from there to resentment, it means that you've not allowed her to see the process in your mind. So
not talking about later, mom. I'm talking about like you go and you start.
It can't be later. It can't be later. What I'm saying is, it cannot be later because you cannot enter into a space of vulnerability. Say you're open, the conversation being had, and then you hit a wall. Don't be vulnerable at that point. Don't share how you feel. Walk away, and then later you're feeling a type of way. No, that is not how that works. You bring something to the table. You know it is volatile. You know this could go any which way. And she say, yeah, no, I actually want you to work hard for the next 10 years of your life and give me that so I can have this house. Now you have to ask yourself, who am I and who am I with? Because your life is still your life. Understand what he's saying, you know? This, what he just said, is not pretty at all, you know? The desire to be open and to be a full human being, that means that you could be with somebody for 8 years and finally get to a point where you feel you could have that conversation. And in realizing that, at that point, you're like, oh, no, I don't have 10 years to do that with you.
Yeah.
Listen, and now we could sit with that. We don't need to make a decision on that. Come back to the table again, like you say, write the email and wait a day, wait 2 days, right? So we sit down, we wait for a little bit, and we come back again. But if you want my life, you want my whole life, you want my health, you want my strength, you want my youth, you want all of that to make you happy, okay, I could give you it, you know. But here what I gonna need. If I doing all of that, let me tell you something. Yeah, but no, it might be more than that. Listen, I've actually always wanted to be with more than one person. And if I have to do all of this for you, I'm going to need someone to support me emotionally. And actually, this is how I've been. The discussion starts to get to levels now because what you're asking for, and don't get tired, it can go the next way too. You know, if you're being vulnerable. For me, what defines a man is I need the people around me and myself to feel safe, safety. And that is in every aspect. Safe to be vulnerable, safe when the night come, safety. Safety for me is what I would never want anybody within my space to feel as though they are unsafe for any reason at all.
So the reason I asked that question specifically is because before we wrap, I want to have an understanding when we say responsibilities doesn't define manhood. But as a man, you still have responsibilities and you don't shirk those responsibilities.
Of course,
right?
but you are more than those responsibilities.
But you're more than that, right? As you know, as we said, we're not peanut butter, right? We're not peanuts, we are peanut butter. We have a lot of other things going for us.
Yes.
And I want to have that understanding of what you understood as a man to then, you know, tell us now to have a little bit deeper in that conversation to say within manhood that we're not shirking our responsibilities so that because people could be listening and taking on certain aspects of the show and thinking, boy, as a man, I do have to deal with no responsibilities.
I mean, we're not talking about being an idiot. You get older,
you know,
and as a human being, you have certain responsibilities. If you as a man enter into a space and you have a child, you now have a responsibility. Forget what your life was before. A child is now a part of the space. However, what we're saying is, you cannot dedicate yourself so much to the upbringing of that child that you lose yourself in the process and think that you are not taken away from the raising of a child. It's not food and lights and water that has raised a child. They need a father. And for him to have a father, you have to have a self. For you to have a self, you need to know who you are. For you to know who you are, you have to do certain things. You have to go and enjoy yourself. You want to go and take a long walk in the bush by yourself. You want to, whatever those things are that make you a full human being.
An expansive human being.
Expansive, because now you'll have an expansive family. You'll have an expansive child.
But a hard boy.
It's hard. Nobody not saying this shit easy. Living is hard. Truly living. You understand? This is not
It's
easy.
work. Relationships
You know
are
real
work
hard
as
too?
well.
You know,
real
real
hard too?
Not.
I show it real hard. Being in your 80s, boy, and just lying down on your bed, it's miserable, boy.
That is hell. That is
You understand?
That's hell, you
I
know.
live my whole life. I work Wassa for 35 years. I support all them children. And none of them can come and visit me on a Sunday evening.
And why? Because you was never a full human being to them.
Yeah.
They never see you cry. You
Yeah.
could never cry in your arms. I had an experience with someone where we were watching through a much older person. We were watching through some pictures. And in one of the pictures, they had this beach, could have been Bali or Thailand or something. To get to the beach, you had to climb down a ladder kind of thing and whatever. And in my mind, I really want to visit that place. And I felt this energy next to me of this older man. And he was just like, yeah, I will never be able to do something like that again. You know, and me and this man are having this discussion about exactly what Lou is talking about him walking his whole life. And then it got to the point where he was able to kind of admit to me that there was oftentimes a slight resentment for how I was able to live my life, because I doing what I want to do in a certain way. You know what I mean?
Fellas, we're gonna extend the segment, right? Because in our responsibility, we're touching on something that you can't just spit out a line or two and then just throw it away, because I guarantee you, in the same way I almost come into tears, that other people are listening to this as a moment, because you don't really, you know, you have all these other sayings, you don't miss the water till the well run dry, people don't plan, there's all these conversations now on financial literacy, and planning for that rainy day, planning for when you're your old age. And that's why you see a lot of people also have a lot of children hoping for that to happen in their old age. And then you turn around, like you said, Lou, and abandonment. You know, woman could leave at the last minute. I've seen, you know, one brother that we had on the show where, you know, when he found out he had cancer, at that moment the woman said, I can't handle that and gone.
Facts.
Right? So it happens. And for you to reach 80, Lou, when you need, you know, it depends on how you set up your life. Because let's face it, you making $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 even a month, right? You could be getting company car, etc. When you turn 65, and that is it for you, and the way things are moving now, you still have a mortgage to pay and all these other things. One, the company car going back. Two, to be able to continue to live that lifestyle throughout, you still have to be making a $15,000 or $20,000, which would mean you would have to have a pension plan in excess of over $2 million set up. Now, let's be real. You understand?
That's 1% of the population.
You're not having that. I know you had a long conversation with Anthony Bourdain and things like that. So you know, so
Excuse what I mean.
So
I don't want to get Rob when I leave here. No, just relax yourself. You're laughing.
I am just saying,
Viewers,
you had to do the box. The
the
right?
views
Disclaimer.
of Robert Dumas are not held by
No, you
Freetown
don't understand
Collective.
what
You
he
know?
was saying.
What are you saying?
I am.
What he was saying is, you know of the people who could do that.
Right, okay.
Okay.
Thought he was pinpointing
No,
on that
no,
boy. I
no.
live in the New Order, boy.
There's a percentage of people in the country, right? And we're not. And when I say percentage, I'm talking about beyond 5%, beyond 10, maybe even 6-7% of the country that are set up in that way. Be it whether from accumulated wealth, whether it be from inherited wealth, whether it be from annuities. There's certain plans, people who have foresight to be able to do so, that they're set up. But there's a huge majority of men who are going to get into that point, and at that point you're going to be, what doing?
Yeah.
Where am I at? What's a good? And if you now have to the point of losing family, or at the point that you become sick, or you know you have colorectal cancer, or all of these other things taking place, and you're now in a hospital bed, for you to sit down in that environment alone.
Well, Robert,
Thank you for
When
making
I-
the point.
go ahead.
Because this is the pinnacle of the show. You are not a work machine.
And at that
You are a
point,
human being, brother. And what I want to tell all the men out there is, we young and strong. and could do the things that we could do in the years of our youth. But you know what? Equally important, emotional investment in community.
I was about
Because
to
you
say,
see all those money systems and annuities, it could all go to
yeah, could mean nothing.
if we don't have community, like real human beings invested in our well-being till our point of transitioning, it will be all for naught.
Yeah, and that's what I was about to say when you were talking about, because now, to me, and it always gets to this point, right? We're no longer speaking about ourselves as individuals. What we're talking about actually is revolution, you know? Because the way that we exist now, all of what we're talking about here, it struggles to exist and to thrive in the environment we've been placed in. We're talking about living in a cage. We're talking about living in a space where we actually have to struggle to have these conversations where we shouldn't. We struggle to live. We live in a place where we are told to have certain aspirations. And if you don't have that, you look down on somebody else who driving a old car. You look down on somebody who living in a 2-bedroom and never ask if they're happy or if we never ask. You understand? We never ask. And with this constant going, attaining. And as long as I have it, I could feel good. I have it. And then you reach, like Lou said, you're in your 80s, going up into your 90s, if God spare life. And you have all the things. Let me say you have the things. It's set up.
You wouldn't be happy. You wouldn't be happy at all because it's things.
It's things.
Right? I had a client, 57-year-old guy, and he said that he contacted me because he have everything. He say he work in the bank, so he reach where's the highest level. He had a corner office. You know, he showed me, look at my house, you answer. Look at, I have my children and my wife and thing. And he say, something missing. And he don't know what it is. Also I asked him, I say, right now, if you're not thinking about anybody, what would you do? He say he would jump on a bike and just ride around the world. So I say, well, why do that? He say, well, and then he started to say all of these things, but he created all those things. He created these very things. As I was saying, the architect, we create our own matrix. So we create it, then in it, and then vex with it. If you understand what I'm saying.
Of course. Of course.
But what you all were saying, because of the programming, and now that we understand the programming, and I love the word you use, revolution, because I was thinking the same thing. I was thinking a lot of these things we're saying is going against the grain. It's pulling yourself out of the matrix. And I love that every episode that we do on the show help me get a little piece of what I define to be a man for myself now. And I think I reached a point where what I would define myself as a man is being a whole person.
Of course.
Right? And I guess that's what
beautiful.
Is too,
yeah.
But
a whole person,
ourselves as a whole person because we've been living half lives, quarter lives, fractional lives.
Mutilated lives.
We're running down things. And the thing is, all of us were programmed in different ways because of our families. I see my father do this, I see my uncles do this, I see my father do, etc., etc. And we go to attain it, but something I believe in our souls just tell us now.
It cried. And just for me, the last thing I would say is this, because I was having this conversation with him yesterday.
Say the camera.
Yeah, it's our spirits are crying out for truth, right? And the truth of a kind of way, when it show up, it is just everything has crumbled, and it is, you know. And I grew up in a space where I had to be very politically correct because my father had many wives, and we had a family situation that was much more like a kingdom, a kind of dynasty thing going on. You couldn't always be yourself. It wasn't safe, you know. And I think many people feel that way growing up. You make a measure of the world you're living in, and then you make a measure of yourself, and you realize, oh, I'm a square, this is a circle. I need to pretend to be a circle. I'm going to fix them edges real quick and just stuff myself in there. And then as you get older, you just realize that the thing that sets everything right is when you be who you're supposed to be, that whole human you're talking about. But the revolution occurs now because you have allowed the space to assume that this is your shape. And then you start telling the truth and you realize, oh wow, I thought he was a circle, but this is some kind of oblong something, whatever. Can the people around you now accept that? Can you yourself accept that now when you wake up and look in the mirror? Because now you're going to be fighting old programming in your own self. You know what I mean? And I think that what life is supposed to be and what manhood is supposed to be is the journey towards the discovery of that whole self. And maybe we never get there fully. And maybe that's the beautiful part of it, that you always have something to look forward to. But that journeying towards understanding who am I in my wholeness
Today.
And I think that that's what strengthens the communities. Because I was also saying to him that when you start telling the truth, you give other people permission to tell the truth as well. Because somebody else will say, oh, me too. I didn't know that that could be said. You know, I didn't know that that could be lived. Yeah, being a whole human, which is truthfulness.
I share a video with me, and they were saying, do you know you can measure the different emotions based on frequency, right? And well, one, this is outside of the video. I learned that shame, the vibration of shame, the solo is close to when you're a dead body, right? And then the highest vibration I thought was joy. But actually, the highest vibration is authenticity. No matter how it comes, even if your authenticity is your mother, that your authentic self, that is the highest vibration.
The highest stress is our life.
So if we thinking about being the best self, then we have to be the honest self. I ain't saying it easy, because I know this is easier said than done, especially for us men. And I really want to delve into that, read that book, The Manipulated Man, to get you through the whole book to understand it, because I feel like just talking to that.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, we're going to get audio book for sure.
Right? But I think I remember at age 11, we were thinking about, if everybody was the authentic self, how would the world look? And to this day, I haven't seen it yet. And I would love, you know, you start telling me sometimes I want to see a utopia, right? I would love to see, even if it's not the whole world, to be, if I'm in a space with 100 people.
Just being themselves, bro.
I just want to see it now. I think it would be so beautiful. It's like a painting.
You know what I would tell you? Come on, Freetown concert. But anyhow.
One more thing to say.
Say it to the camera.
And this would be for all the men out there. There's a quote I heard about 10 years ago, and it not only changed my life, it changed Muhammad's life as well, and everybody around us. It's a man I really respect. He's one of my mentors, even though you don't know it. It's a man called Professor Cornel West. And he said the condition of truth is to allow suffering to speak. Many don't have to suffer in silence. Even if you find a room by yourself and say it aloud, you had to say it.
Yeah, way.
Men, we are suffering, and it has not been doing us any favors keeping it inside. That is what this is.
I normally, and I think as a season finale, I'd have something really powerful to say or something at all. But, you know, the truth is, I appreciate, you know, I've appreciated all, you know, the guests that have come on the show, the brothers that have shared. Appreciate this one very powerfully, but something about this one resonating with me in the sense that rather than a closure, just have a quicker conversation before we close on the fact that, because the topic is responsibilities don't define manhood. But at the same time, on the focus of those responsibilities, the beneficiaries of your focus to what those responsibilities to provide, whether it be a house, to put food on the table and so on, are not guaranteed to stay in your life.
Exactly.
And so you could end up at the end of your life looking back at what you dedicated it to with the thought or the expectation to not be alone, or to not be in that state that you now may find yourself in, be it in a hospital bed somewhere, or in a home, or at the side of the road, whatever the case may be, right? And in the end, the fear of man is to be, one, to not be enough, to not be loved, and in bigger context, to not die alone. And so something with the conversation there about where your focus should really be, and having that conversation.
Die before you die. Die before you die. Right? It is, every single teaching tells you this. And what that means is that you live and you walk with the expectation of your end. Right? So, you have children, or people in your life, you have to sit down sometimes and think about your life without them. Who are you defined as in the absence of all the things you have gathered around you? Whether it be your house, your car, your children, your wife, your lover, your dog. If all of these things were to vanish, you have to have this thought. You cannot run from these thoughts. If everything I have was to go, and if you find that uncomfortable to sit with, which you will, you have to put yourself into a state. People think that meditation is useless, but people think meditation is sit down and just try to quiet your mind space. No, it's focus. It's where you put your focus, right? And one of those things is, as you go along, you cannot wait for the end of your life to come for you to begin to negotiate what the end of your life is going to look like for you. When all of these things are gone,
what is left?
When, you know what I mean? What Junior going to say, when the turbo shut off and all life lock off and I'm a mere mortal again, and all these things gone, how are you going to enjoy this one life that you have been given? What do you like to do? What do you like to eat? You understand? Do you paint? Do you run? Do you draw? What you just do, not what you do for other people. What do you do?
Exactly.
So, gents,
Listen, that actually is for the men, influx of men I came. Most of them I give that assignment to know. Write down what is your life.
Yeah.
It could be from the trivial thing to where you like to eat to bigger aspirations. And most men say they had a hard time writing 5 things. They had a hard time writing 3.
I tell you, if you ask me and he that, I give a thesis on what I like.
one time.
I know I keep saying one more thing.
I realize that, but it's one of those things.
There is one more thing. And the reason why I think this is important is because it came from women in my life. And this really, really shake up my idea of my own manhood. I've been 2 distinct times where women wanted to do something good for me. And immediately, I tried to calculate the most cost-effective way that would not cause them to sacrifice. And they got mad at me. They said, no, choose the one that you like. Bro, I went and cried like a little baby. And that is when I felt all the compartments that society put inside of me just break down. That I'm worthy to do things that I like. Not because I have a penis and I could lift heavy thing. Mean that we are exempt from doing things that we like.
Yeah, facts.
We deserve it.
Say no more.
Tomas, you deserve it. You deserve it.
You deserve
You
it.
deserve it. Hey, men out there, all you deserve it. You know?
You deserve
They
it.
deserve it,
Yeah,
and they
they
need to
deserve
know
it.
that they deserve it.
Yeah.
And we certainly deserve to go longer, but we have to come to a close at some point. And I just want to touch in summary across the season of manhood. We've touched on so many things, be it fatherhood, a lot of the terms and terminologies that are used to define man, but also in those terminologies also suppresses our ideologies, our thoughts, and what makes us men at the core. And as you said about breaking up that construct that we've been led to believe we should be. And at the bottom line, it's really down to being yourself. We could only be ourselves. When people say be a man, you could only be that. You could only live your truth. I would like to say
Be my definition.
Be this definition, right? And as we said just now with that box, but I try to live by the fact that you touched on it, Lou, where what is powerful is you can't. I cannot be responsible for somebody else's behavior, somebody else's reaction. I can only determine my own. And therefore, if even with those responsibilities that you determine that's what you want to do, if indeed that those persons make that choice to not be there, what's important is how you acted or how you were in your community.
That's right.
And the people that are around you. That
That's
community doesn't have to be a specific part of it doesn't have to be a demographic. It can be something simply the people you surround yourself by, so that your legacy, a positive one at that, lives on. And trying always to leave a room better than you met it. And as long as you can do that and live your truth,
Say less.
you're being a man.
That's
So
right.
You're being a man. So, Johanse, Lou, Mohammed, really powerful conversation here today on
Yeah,
manhood.
it was.
I appreciate you all.
Thanks for having us, man.
And thank you so much to, of course, all our viewers, listeners, wherever you're hearing or watching Manhood. Thank you for tuning in. I hope that we've brought some sort of enlightenment in that space. And what's one of the other key takeaways before we close? Don't in silence.
Don't suffer in silence.
Don't suffer in silence.
Call somebody, talk
For
to
real.
somebody, something.
For real.
Smoke signal, anything. Just send out something.
Correct.
But he's going to say smoke something, yes?
You know, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. So if you want something different for yourself, do something different.
Would.
Yeah.
So this has been Manhood.
Manhood, brought to you in part by Reboot Sports Drink. Manhood, brought to you in part by Solomon's Bespoke.